Have you ever felt like something is shifting beneath the surface of your life, even though everything on the outside seems the same? Like you're standing in the hallway between what was and what's next, but you can't quite put your finger on what's changing? Maybe you're not sure why you suddenly feel restless where you once felt comfortable, or why relationships are changing, doors are closing, and your prayers feel like they are hitting the ceiling. Friend, that's not confusion. That's not coincidence. That is the unmistakable movement of God preparing to shift your life. God doesn't always warn us when He's about to move. He doesn't always explain the discomfort or ask our permission before He begins to rearrange what we thought was permanent. But when He's ready to take you to a new level, He often starts with disruption. And that disruption can feel like loss, like silence, like isolation, but it's not the end. It's the beginning of something divine. Today we're going to uncover 7 powerful signs that God is shifting your life. These signs may be subtle or startling, but each one is a sacred clue that heaven is aligning something greater for your future. If you've been sensing a change, this message is for you. Don't miss what God is doing. The shift has already begun. In life, we often find ourselves deeply invested in the paths we have chosen, our jobs, relationships, routines, and the familiar comfort of what we know. We become accustomed to our surroundings and the predictability of our daily experiences. However, one of the most powerful ways God shifts our lives is through what we often perceive as divine interruptions. These are moments where our plans are suddenly disrupted and everything we thought was stable is thrown into a state of uncertainty. While these disruptions can be unsettling, they are frequently the very means by which God redirects us toward a greater purpose. The concept of a divine interruption is not a new one. Throughout the Bible we see countless instances where God's plan for individuals involved a sudden and unexpected change. Moses, for instance, was living a quiet life in exile, tending sheep, when God appeared to him in the form of a burning bush. This moment was an interruption to Moses' routine, yet it marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one that would change the course of history. Similarly, Saul of Tarsus was a fierce persecutor of Christians when God interrupted his life on the road to Damascus, blinding him and speaking directly to him. In both instances, what seemed like an inconvenient or even disruptive event was in fact the catalyst for divine transformation. These divine interruptions often come when we least expect them, and they can take many forms. Perhaps you lose a job unexpectedly, or find that a long-term relationship is no longer viable. Maybe an opportunity presents itself out of the blue, challenging everything you thought you knew about your life's direction. While we may initially view these disruptions with frustration or fear, it's essential to recognize that God does not act without purpose. What we see as an interruption is, in reality, God's way of positioning us for something greater. The key to understanding divine interruptions is trust. When our plans are suddenly disrupted, we are often left feeling uncertain or even betrayed by life's circumstances. But what we may fail to see in the moment is that God is working behind the scenes to prepare us for something beyond our imagination. His divine interruptions are not a sign of abandonment or failure. They are a sign of His deep love and care for us. Just as a loving parent would guide a child away from danger, God gently steers us away from paths that may ultimately harm us. In fact, these interruptions often serve as new beginnings, a reset in our lives that forces us to reevaluate our priorities, beliefs, and goals. God's ability to turn what seems like a setback into a stepping stone is a testament to His sovereignty. What appears to be a painful interruption in our journey may be the very moment that God reveals His perfect plan for our life. The Apostle Paul, who faced countless distractions and hardships, wrote that we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. This verse reminds us that even when our lives are interrupted in ways we don't understand, God is always at work bringing about His will for us. When a divine interruption occurs, it is an invitation to let go of our own plans and embrace the unfolding of God's will. It is not a sign that we have lost control, but rather a sign that God is guiding us into a new season, one that may require a fresh perspective, new relationships, or a shift in our understanding of who we are meant to be. In those moments of disruption, we are called to trust God's wisdom and timing, knowing that He is preparing us for a future far better than we could have ever imagined. One of the most profound and unmistakable signs that God is shifting your life is the presence of peace amidst chaos. Life is often filled with turmoil and uncertainty, job pressures, family conflicts, financial worries, and personal struggles. These challenges can create an overwhelming sense of confusion and fear. However, when God is at work in our lives, He can provide a peace that transcends the surrounding chaos, offering us the sense of calm even in the most difficult of circumstances. This peace is not of our own making, nor can it be explained by external factors. It is a gift from God, an inner stillness that assures us that He is in control. The concept of peace in the midst of turmoil is a central theme throughout Scripture. Jesus Himself, when speaking to His disciples, said, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." Here Christ contrasts the peace He offers with the peace the world offers, which is often temporary and dependent on external conditions. The peace that Jesus gives is deeper, lasting, and unaffected by circumstances. It is a peace that can settle into the hearts of those who trust in Him, no matter how stormy the world around them becomes. When God is shifting our lives, we may find ourselves walking through storms of difficulty and adversity. At the same time, there is a quiet assurance within us, a deep knowing that despite the chaos, everything will be all right. This inner peace serves as a sign that God's presence is with us, guiding us through the turbulence and assuring us that He is in control. In times of financial distress, family breakdown, or personal failure, it can feel like everything is falling apart. But in the midst of these trials, God's peace stands as a constant reminder that He is not distant or absent. He is near, and He is working on our behalf. The peace we experience during times of chaos is not a denial of reality. It does not mean that we are immune to the struggles of life or that we will not face challenges. Instead, it is a peace that allows us to endure and persevere through those challenges. It enables us to face difficult situations with faith, knowing that God is with us in the storm. This peace empowers us to rise above fear and anxiety, trusting that God is using even our hardships for a greater purpose. Furthermore, this peace is often accompanied by a sense of clarity. When life seems to be spinning out of control, we can become overwhelmed by confusion and indecision. Yet, in the midst of this turmoil, the peace of God often brings clarity of thought and a renewed sense of direction. It helps us make decisions with confidence, even when the outcome is uncertain. This clarity is a sign that God is shifting our lives toward His will and purpose. In a world where peace is often fleeting and conditional, the peace that God provides during times of chaos is a powerful testament to His presence and sovereignty. It is a peace that cannot be shaken by circumstances or the uncertainties of life. It is a peace that assures us in the depths of our hearts that God is working all things together for our good. When you experience this peace, it is not a sign of weakness or passivity. It is a sign of divine strength and assurance. A sign that God is about to bring about a shift in your life that will transform your circumstances in ways you cannot yet imagine. There are few experiences more discouraging than praying earnestly for something and hearing only silence in return. We may cry out to God for healing, for a breakthrough, for a specific door to open, and when that prayer seems to go unanswered, we begin to wonder if God is listening at all. Yet one of the most subtle and powerful signs that God is about to shift your life is when your prayers seem to go unanswered, not because God is withholding good from you, but because He is preparing something better than what you asked for. Unanswered prayers are not a mark of divine indifference, where God is redirecting your path to align with His higher purposes. From a human perspective, we are conditioned to equate answered prayer with favor and silence with absence. But the Bible repeatedly shows us that God's silence is not the same as His absence. It is in these quiet seasons, when the heavens seem closed and our cries go unanswered, that God is doing some of His deepest work. He is refining our character, expanding our faith, and guiding us away from what we want toward what we truly need. Sometimes the very thing we are begging God to give us is not aligned with our destiny. And in His love, He closes that door to spare us from a future that would limit us. Consider the story of Hannah in the book of 1 Samuel. For years she prayed for a child and received no answer. In her anguish she cried out to God at the temple, and eventually her prayer was answered with the birth of Samuel. But in that delay, God was not punishing her. He was preparing her. Her waiting shaped her into a woman of deeper prayer and commitment, and the son she bore would become one of Israel's greatest prophets. What felt like rejection was really redirection, and the outcome was far greater than she could have foreseen. When prayers go unanswered, it often forces us to reevaluate our motives, to dig deeper into our relationship with God, and to surrender our own desires in favor of His. It is in this space of surrender that we become more open to unexpected opportunities, ones that we would never have seen had God answered our original request. These new doors often carry blessings that are more aligned with our calling, our purpose, and our long-term growth. Additionally, unanswered prayers teach us patience and dependency on God. They humble us, strip away our sense of control, and cause us to lean not on our own understanding, but on God's timing. His silence cultivates perseverance and builds spiritual maturity. When God finally moves, the opportunity that unfolds often comes with confirmation, clarity, and purpose that make it obvious why the earlier request was denied. Unanswered prayers also create room for divine surprises. We may be so focused on what we think we want that we fail to see what God is placing in our path. When our hands are too full of our own plans, there is little room to receive His. But when a door remains shut despite our knocking, it can be because another, better door is about to swing open. One that leads to deeper fulfillment, greater impact, and a clearer view of God's plan for our lives. One of the clearest signs that God is preparing to shift your life is when there is a noticeable change in the people around you. Relationships begin to shift. Some people begin to drift away, others unexpectedly leave, and new individuals come into your life seemingly out of nowhere. These changes, yet in the spiritual realm, such relational shifts are rarely random. They are often part of a divine strategy to position you for your next season. God uses people to help fulfill His purposes in your life, and at times the shift He wants to bring requires a realignment of the relationships in your circle. When God begins to remove certain individuals from your life, it's not always a sign of betrayal or failure. Sometimes people have simply completed their assignment in your life. They were there for a season, perhaps to teach you something, to walk with you through a specific experience, or to challenge you in ways that helped you grow. But seasons change, and just as nature releases what is no longer needed, God also orchestrates a release in our lives so we can move forward. Holding on too tightly to relationships that are no longer serving God's purpose can actually delay your growth and hinder the shift He wants to bring. There are also times when God will cause certain relationships to become strained, not out of cruelty, but to create distance for your protection. This can be confusing because the people we love may not necessarily be bad influences, but they may be holding us back from where God is taking us. Perhaps they are tied to your past identity, an old mindset, a former way of life, or a season you've outgrown. When God begins to change who you are becoming, He will often change who surrounds you. This is not to isolate you, but to insulate you as He builds something new within you. On the other hand, as some people exit your life, you will begin to notice new individuals entering it. These new relationships may carry wisdom, encouragement, or insight that speaks directly to where you are going, not just where you have been. They may come with fresh perspectives, divine connections, or simply the right word at the right time. These people are often used by God to confirm the direction He is leading you and to support you as you walk into the new territory He has prepared. It's also important to recognize that God doesn't just change who is around you. He changes how you relate to those around you. You may begin to see others through a different lens, gaining discernment about their role in your life. Some relationships will deepen in unexpected ways, while others will naturally fade without conflict or closure. The shifting of relationships is part of how God cleans the soil before planting something new. Just as a gardener prunes the branches to make room for fresh growth, God sometimes prunes our relational lives to make space for what is next. These shifts can be painful, but they are rarely without purpose. When God is about to shift your life, one of the most noticeable and invigorating signs is a sudden and unexpected renewal of passion and vision. This internal stirring can arise after a long season of feeling stagnant, lost, or indifferent. What once seemed routine or meaningless suddenly becomes infused with purpose and energy. Dreams that had grown cold or been tucked away due to fear, disappointment, or delay begin to awaken. There is a fresh desire to pursue what matters deeply and an inner fire that pushes you to move forward, even if you can't yet see the full path ahead. This renewed passion is not driven by ambition or external validation, but by something deeper. It often comes quietly, through prayer, reflection, or moments of solitude, when your heart becomes aware that there is more. It may be subtle at first, a persistent idea, a reoccurring thought, or a longing to step out of what is comfortable and into something greater. Over time, it grows into a clarity that begins to guide your decisions, shape your mindset, and pull you toward your divine purpose. It is God's way of awakening the gifts and callings He has placed inside you. Gifts that may have been buried under the weight of disappointment, distraction, or doubt. Vision is tied to this passion. God doesn't just ignite a fire within you. He begins to show you glimpses of what He's calling you toward. This may come in the form of inspiration, prophetic words, divine ideas, or even unusual opportunities that resonate with the deepest parts of who you are. Where once you lacked direction, now there is a sense of momentum. Where there was confusion, there is now insight. This kind of clarity does not necessarily map out every detail, but it reveals enough to take the next step with confidence and faith. You begin to sense that your life is not random, that God has a plan, and you are being summoned into it. In many cases, this renewed passion and vision also bring a holy discontent. You start to feel restless with your current surroundings or situation, not out of ungratefulness, but because your spirit knows there's something more. The things that once satisfied or distracted you no longer hold the same appeal. There is a longing to make an impact, to live intentionally, and to pursue what is eternal over what is temporary. This discontent pushes you to seek God more earnestly, to listen more carefully, and to prepare yourself for what's coming. God also uses this renewal to stretch your faith. With vision comes the need for trust. You may not have all the resources, qualifications, or support in place yet, but the burning passion in your heart tells you that you cannot stay where you are. You become willing to take risks, to move in obedience, and to sacrifice comfort for calling. Often, the very things that once intimidated you begin to feel like opportunities instead of obstacles. You begin to see your potential not through the lens of your past failures, but through the eyes of a God who is calling you into something great. One of the more confusing and emotionally taxing signs that God is about to shift your life is the sudden closing of doors you thought would remain open. Opportunities you believed were certain vanish without warning. A job offer falls through. A relationship you invested in begins to fall apart. A project that once showed promise hits an unforeseen wall. At first glance, these closures can feel like rejection, failure, or even punishment. But in the spiritual realm, closed doors often serve as divine protection and redirection. What appears as a loss is frequently God's way of guiding you away from what is not meant for you and toward something greater that you cannot yet see. God is not in the business of closing doors to hurt or frustrate you. He does it to align your life with His perfect will. Sometimes a door must close because the timing is wrong. Other times it closes because what's behind it would hinder your growth, compromise your values, or pull you away from your true calling. We may not understand the reasoning in the moment, but over time, clarity begins to surface. We see how that closed door saved us from something that would have delayed or damaged us. It was never about withholding. It was always about protecting and preparing. Scripture gives us countless examples of this divine pattern. In Acts 16, Paul and his companions attempted to go into Asia to preach, but the Holy Spirit prevented them. It wasn't because their intentions were wrong, it was because God had another assignment for them in Macedonia. That redirection was critical for the spreading of the gospel. If Paul had continued through the open door he assumed was right, he would have missed the opportunity God had truly prepared. Closed doors are not denials of purpose. They are often reroutes to purpose. The challenge comes in the waiting, when one door shuts but the next hasn't yet opened. In that space, we are tempted to force things, to cling to what's familiar, or to question God's faithfulness. But this in-between moment is holy ground, is where trust is refined, faith is tested, and patience is cultivated. In that space, God is working behind the scenes, preparing the right people, aligning the right timing, and developing the right version of you who can handle the new door when it opens. A closed door can also be an invitation to examine your heart. Sometimes God uses these moments to recalibrate your motives. Maybe what you were pursuing was more about status than calling, more about comfort than obedience. God's no in those instances is not condemnation, it's grace. It's His way of calling you back into alignment, of reminding you that your life is not driven by human logic, but by divine leading. When a door shuts, especially one you were counting on, it's not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a new chapter, one where God's hand is clearly writing something far more significant than what you have planned. As we've journeyed through these 7 key signs, it becomes clear that when God is about to shift your life, He rarely announces it with fanfare. Instead, He works in quiet movements, subtle signs, and holy disruptions. He allows divine interruptions to reroute your path. He grants peace that makes no sense in the middle of chaos. He leaves prayers unanswered, not to abandon you, but to guide you to something better. He rearranges relationships, awakens long forgotten passions, closes doors you were counting on, and stirs your spirit to recognize that something is about to change. Each of these signs is a whisper from heaven saying, I'm not finished with you, I'm preparing something greater. They are not coincidences or misfortunes, they are sacred shifts. And while they may challenge your comfort, they are designed to shape your calling. Trust the process, lean into the change, and know that even when things feel uncertain, God's hand is steady on your life. You are not being cast aside, you are being called up. As you stand on the edge of what's next, may you have the courage to let go of what was and the faith to embrace what is coming. May the closed doors not discourage you, but deepen your trust. May the silence of unanswered prayers echo with the promise of something greater, and may every shift, every change, every loss, and every gain lead you closer to the destiny God has prepared for you. Thank you for taking the time to reflect on this powerful truth. Keep your heart open, your spirit expectant, and your eyes lifted. God is not done with you yet. The shift is not coming, it's already in motion. Walk in faith and watch what He will do. God bless you, and may the best days of your life still be ahead.